The following contains spoilers for Final Fantasy XIII. Please check the description for more information. Final Fantasy XIII, Episode 0, Promise. Part 4, Search. Chapter 1. Fang felt a tingling chill on the back of her neck as she walked through the crowded streets of the shopping mall in Bodhum. Was it because she was right in the middle of enemy territory? No, that didn't seem quite right. Perhaps it's because she was being followed? No, that wasn't right either. She had already shaken off pursuit. There had been more soldiers after her than she would have expected, but luckily for her, Yuride was situated between the ocean and a range of mountains. There had been plenty of places for her to hide, and the terrain aided her in making strikes against the enemy before fading back into the wilderness. She had gotten lucky and found an air bike that had been left unattended. It made it much easier for her to move quickly. Fang had never ridden a cocoon vehicle, but she somehow managed to learn how to drive it by watching others. It was easy enough to get from Yuride back to Bodhum. A road stretched between them, and it allowed her to follow it even under the cover of night. Before she reached the city, she tossed the air bike to the side of the road, and walked the rest of the way. It was morning when she returned to the temple. But Vanille was not there. The food they had brought back to the temple lay untouched. She must not have returned to Bodhum. Perhaps she was still hiding from the enemy. "Don't worry. No matter where you run to, I'll find you." It was a promise she had made long ago. She had to find her as soon as possible. Vanille was probably lonely, crying in her sleep, like always. "That girl is always crying," she whispered. Her voice rasped. She had forgotten she spent all night running, not being able to eat or drink. Her throat was parched. She walked over to a square machine on the side of the street, and taking her card out, held it against the machine. Pressing buttons at random, she was rewarded as the sound of a drink-filled can fell into the little opening in the front. Fang had already gotten used to opening this sort of can. It was a little different from the cans they had on Grand Pulse, but not too different. She hated to admit it, but once she got used to it, the cocoon cans were actually easier to open. As she drank down the liquid, she thought of Vanille. Right now, she might not be able to get any food, and was probably hungry. They had stolen 2 of these cards, and Vanille had the other one, but they had never tried to see if it would work. The only one they had been using was this one. A bird flapped overhead, and Fang stiffened. A white bird flew past and away. Again? Fang thought. It was that strange owl-looking bird they had seen a few days ago. Although it might look strange, so far it seemed to have brought her luck. They had seen it when they had gotten these cards, after all. She had seen it too, when escaping from Yuride. The time she had found the air bike and managed to throw off her pursuers. If it were true, then maybe something good will happen this time. Like maybe she'll find Vanille. Fang looked into the crowd, hoping to see her. She looked at the entrance of all the stores, watching the people leaving. "I guess not," she sighed. She wasn't at the shopping mall, but perhaps she went to the beach. There were girls there who wore similar clothing. Maybe she went there so she wouldn't stand out. Placing the empty can down on the ground beside her, she stood up and tried to get her bearings. Now where was that beach? "Hey, you could at least pick that up." She ignored the voice behind her. It was better not to get involved with anyone from Cocoon. That, and she knew she had no need to fear attack even if she turned her back to them. Everything was so peaceful and safe here in Cocoon. She could hardly credit it. Even the soldiers she had seen yesterday in Yuride had barely any experience with fighting. Sure, they had training, but no real experience. "Just wait a minute, Miss Rude Girl." This time the voice came from right behind her. She hadn't even noticed. How careless of her. She stopped and looked at the speaker over her shoulder. She made as if to turn around, then dodged to the side and into the crowd. No one would shoot at her in a large group of people like this. These people were soft. She hadn't seen that blue uniform in Yuride, but she knew he was a soldier. He had gotten close to her without even her noticing. He was well trained. It would take skill to run from him. Fang ran outside of the shopping mall, but that was as far as she could go. Any further would take her outside of the crowd, and that would be dangerous. Running into a narrow alleyway, she turned several corners before coming to a dead end, which was easy enough for her to leap over. Fang ran and ran, until finally she no longer knew where she should run to. But there was no one behind her. She was no longer being followed. Fang breathed in relief. She winced. Her chest hurt. She must have run farther than she had thought, as she had to catch her breath before continuing on. Then the world rocked, and she felt the blow to her back. Someone had jumped out behind her, but by the time she realized it, it was too late. "You bastard!" She put all the strength she could into her arms to try and break free, but no, she was trapped. He had her arms pinned, and she couldn't move. "Quiet! We aren't your enemy." He took his hands off her. "I'm sorry I had to do that to you. My name is Rigday. I'm in the cavalry. Not that you know anything about that." A kind-looking but unshaven man stood in front of her. Kind-looking he may be, but he was the one who had trapped her. He was careful and efficient. She knew she wouldn't be able to get free of him. He was probably far stronger than any of the soldiers she had met during her escape.
"There's someone I'd like you to meet. Please come with me."
She only stood because she was already surrounded, each soldier pointing his gun straight at her. But the only one to stand within close-range fighting distance was Rigday. All the others stood as far away from her as possible. Pathetic. They handcuffed and blindfolded her. Rigday put a gentle hand against her shoulder to direct the way to her. There was nothing else she could do but follow their orders.
"If we don't do this, we know you never come quietly. But it's not too far. Don't worry."
Chapter 2. It wasn't long before Fang realized why they had blindfolded her. The airship they pushed her into was so narrow, they wouldn't even have been able to use their guns on her. If she hadn't been blindfolded and bound, she could have fought back and escaped. But she wasn't bound for long, as Rigday had promised. They hadn't been in the air for long when she felt the rumble of the airship landing. She felt hands on her back, directing her to move, but it wasn't long before she had to stop again. There was a low noise. It sounded vaguely familiar to her, and she soon realized it was the sound of doors opening and closing. All the doors at the shopping mall and energy plant had made the same sound. A voice started speaking, but it was the one she didn't recognize. Perhaps this is the man Rigday had wanted her to meet. It seemed Rigday was a captain. She'd heard the word often during her escape. From what she had learned from other soldiers, they added these words to names depending on their rank. The blindfold fell from her face, and Fang squinted in the bright light of the cabin. She scanned the area, finding that all the soldiers were gone. There was only two in the room beside herself, Rigday and one other man. He had black hair and a cool expression on his face that showed he was no pushover.
"Take off the binds."
"Are you sure about that, General Rains? This girl shouldn't be taken lightly."
"I don't care."
Just what could this man be thinking? Fang wasn't happy about being bound like this, but she knew she would do the same if she were in their shoes. He must have some sort of plan already in place if he was going to unbind her. Their eyes met, and he smiled.
"This is what you are thinking right now. You are a lessee of Pulse, and all of Cocoon is your enemy. But there are exceptions to anything you know."
Fang stood wordlessly, staring into the man's eyes. She tried to read something of his thoughts anyway, but they were unreadable as the writings of Cocoon. His eyes were as cold and dark as midwinter, and had unknown depths.
"I am Sid Rains. I may control the cavalry fleet, but I am not your enemy."
Fang wasn't stupid enough to take those words at face value. She snorted.
"Don't be an idiot. When it comes to my enemies, there are no exceptions. Of course, our charge is to protect the people of Cocoon, but just because that which we want to protect is different, does that really make us enemies? What the hell is that supposed to mean?"
No, Fang thought. I don't even want to understand. Rains took out a small device and placed it to his ear. It was hard for Fang to believe since it was so small, but that machine was a wireless communicator on Cocoon.
"Ah, Lieutenant Nabat. What's your status?"
She wondered who he was talking to. Rains looked up and met her eyes. A woman's voice crackled from the device. Fang looked around, startled.
"The perpetrator is still on the run. We haven't been able to locate her."
"It's the same on this end. We do plan on searching from the air between Uriday and Bodhum, however." Fang couldn't figure out how it worked, but it seemed that with that device he could hear the voices of other people. Rains smiled faintly, perhaps finding her reaction amusing.
"We believe that she is hiding somewhere in the gorge, so before we—"
"Ah, you believe we would have a higher chance of finding her from the air. Understood. Anything else?"
"Once she is captured, she must be handed over to PSICOM headquarters immediately."
"Is that our orders?" Rains glanced at Fang. She wondered if he was telling her that if ordered, he would send her over to them.
"It is a request."
PSICOM's requests are the same as orders from the Sanctum, of course. It didn't take long for Fang to figure out that the relationship between these two was not particularly friendly. "Though I'm amazed that it has been a full day since the accident, and I have yet to be informed of the details. Though if it involves you, then it must be something very important. That, at least, is plain to see."
"Unfortunately, I can't answer that," the woman replied sarcastically. "That information is classified, and under control of PSICOM."
"Oh, you're always like this," Rains sighed and switched off the communicator. The smile fell from his face as he looked at Fang. "And so now you know. The army of the Sanctum is not one-sided."
"Sanctum army?"
"Yes, there are two armies. There are two arms to the army of Sanctum. The Wide Area Response Brigade, also known as the Cavalry. That's us, who protect the people. And PSICOM, Sanctum Special Forces."
"What does that matter? You're all enemies to me."
Rains ignored that and continued. "The reason I ordered Rigday to bring you here is not so that we can hand you over to PSICOM. In fact, it's just the opposite." What did it matter? Either way, the armies of Cocoon wanted to capture Lassie. Fang couldn't understand what he was trying to say. We do not agree with the actions of PSICOM and do not align ourselves with them.
So you think that means you aren't my enemy? Yeah, right.
It was likely that they really were against PSICOM if that conversation they had a minute ago was any indication, but that didn't mean they were Fang's allies.
You just think that by capturing me, you'll be the first one to get information on Pulse.
It was a common scenario, getting one up on your enemies to make them look bad.
But unfortunately for you, I'm a broken lessee.
She looked down at the brand on her arm. When she had awoken, it had been burned white, as though a scorch mark had been left from when everything had been burned clean from her mind.
I can't remember my focus or my memories. I don't have any information you could want. And...
She wasn't sure if she should tell this to the enemy.
I'm looking for a friend. I don't have time to help you.
Fang hadn't been sure she should say anything, but she needed information about Vanille. She wondered what reaction the two men would make on hearing the word friend. But they were silent. Their faces told her nothing. I understand. It's up to you whether you want to help us or not. But in the meantime, you'll be staying with us.
Of course, Fang thought. Whatever they'd been saying, all they really wanted to do was lock me up and keep an eye on me. If that's the case, then my only choice is escape.
Captain, take her to the residential area.
Understood.
From how they spoke to one another, Fang could tell that Raines was ranked higher than Rigday. But despite that, they seemed far closer than it would appear at first glance. She wondered if maybe they were close in age. No, she had no time or reason to be thinking about that. There were more important things to think about.
Hey, girlie, don't try to fight your way out of here, eh?
Rigday said, slapping her on the back.
He is strong, Fang thought.
But you're not much of a girl, are you?
He let go of her.
But you know, if we really got into a fight, one of us probably wouldn't make it out alive. So hey, let's be friends.
Fang had no interest in being friends with him, but it was true that if they got into a fight, there would be some serious injury. She raised both her hands up in truce. Just beyond the door lay a narrow hall. Because the previous room had been so low and wide, Fang had thought that all of Cocoon's buildings were built like that. But it seems that this wasn't the case.
What? You don't even have windows around here?
The tight quarters made it hard for her to breathe, making her even more irritable.
I doubt you'd find much use for windows in the middle of an airship.
An airship?
You're inside the Lindblom, an airship.
She touched the walls of the ship. If this were really a ship, she would have been able to feel its movement. At least it was that way with ships on Grand Pulse. But she felt no rumbling beneath her fingertips, which must mean they were docked.
What, you didn't know? Well, we are currently in flight.
It's flying?
She couldn't believe it. The ship wasn't shaking or vibrating at all. No, she could feel the slightest tremble in the floor beneath her feet, but it was so faint she could hardly tell. She'd been surprised at the speed at which the train going from Bodhum to Uriday had moved, but this ship was clearly even more powerful. Fang relaxed.
So, this is a ship.
Fang looked down the hall stretching far behind her, and looked back to see how far it continued forward. It went farther than she could see in either direction.
It can't.
When she thought that this was a building, she had felt the hallway was horribly narrow and tight, and that the room she was in before had an oddly low ceiling. But if this were an airship...
You okay?
Yeah, I was just thinking this is one damn big ship.
Really? Well, the Sanctum Skyfleet's Palamecia is even bigger.
I think my head hurts.
Fang could hardly imagine it. These ships were on an entirely different scale from what they had on Grand Pulse. Not just the ships. The guns the soldiers carried were more powerful than any she had seen before. The beasts and the birds, and moreover the humans of Cocoon, were very weak in comparison to Grand Pulse. Of course there were a few like Rigday who she could see were strong, but most of the soldiers she had seen on Cocoon were weak. But Cocoon had technology. Fang didn't know what other sorts of technology they had, but what if all of these people could use it? They may be surrounded by a worse enemy than they had imagined. Once they made it to the end of the hall, there was a staircase. Fang wondered just how much further they had to go, especially since they had already walked a considerable ways. How long would it take you to walk from one end to the other?
Well, you sure gotten quiet. It wasn't too long ago that you were barking like a feral dog.
Well, I'm not a dog. Don't treat me like one. I was just thinking of a way to get out of here.
Well, don't do that.
Rigday's face grew serious.
PSICOM has set up barricades all around Bodhum. I'd like to see you try and escape from there.
I'm not so stupid that I'd get caught by those assholes.
I don't think you quite get it.
Don't get what?
Rigday sighed.
You managed to get through the barricade around the plant on your own, I'll give you that. Do you know how hard we worked to get you free?
Free?
Well, we couldn't just capture you right in front of PSICOM. They would have told us to hand you over. You heard them, right?
We couldn't let that happen, so we were busy overriding their surveillance system and sending false info over their wireless.
Fang didn't really know what exactly they had done with the surveillance system and wireless, but it seemed that Raines and Rigday had helped her escape.
I don't get it. Why do this if we're enemies? It's like General Raines said, it's in our interest to help you. The enemy of our enemy is our friend. The enemy of our enemy is our friend, huh? Huh.
Fang could understand that better than just saying they weren't enemies. Even though they were enemies, joining forces under those circumstances wasn't something completely unheard of.
Here's your room, girlie.
Rigday stopped in front of several doors. Fang had no idea where they were or where they had come from. Even if she wanted to escape, she wouldn't be able to.
Sorry it's so small.
Even though it didn't have much, just a bed and a small table, it was a real room. Fang would have no problem staying here.
You can call me Fang. Hey, stop calling me girlie.
Rigday smiled.
I knew you didn't like being called that, but I didn't know what else to call you. So you should have asked my name. If I had asked, would you have told me?
No.
No, probably not.
Until a little while ago, she had no intention of telling him her name. Rigday was strong. While people might tell lies, there were no lies in strength.
You said you were looking for your friend, right? Rigday asked, as if just remembering. Are they strong like you? Stronger than any soldier on Cocoon. Are all women on post so strong?
She had told them that she was looking for a friend, but she hadn't told them she was a girl. Fang narrowed her eyes.
Don't look at me like that. We looked at the surveillance cameras from your day. The picture wasn't too clear, but we could at least see that much.
Fang breathed a sigh of relief. Vanille hadn't been captured.
Are you worried? Well, of course you are. Doesn't matter how strong she is, she's still all alone. And she cries all the time.
Vanille would always cry, waking up from a bad dream, holding on to Fang and begging her not to leave her alone. She'd always been like that, since they were children.
And sometimes she laughs at the strangest things.
When was the last time she had seen Vanille laugh? In the train to Uriday? No, she had been surprised at everything, but she hadn't laughed. Had she even laughed since they had woken up?
Should I look for her?
Fang wouldn't have expected him to make such an offer. Rigday seemed like a nice enough guy, but he was still the enemy.
I mean, right now you can't leave here, can you? If you went out there, it would be suicide. But I understand you're worried about her. I have friends myself.
Rigday said with a smile. It didn't seem as though he was lying.
I don't want to owe you anything. Well then, how about this? We make a deal. A deal. We can't let you fall into PSICOM's hands, so I'll search for your friend. In return, you guys cannot let yourself get captured by PSICOM.
Cocoon's soldiers weren't that strong by themselves, but they had technology, and even within those soldiers, there were a few strong ones like Rigday. Surrounded by soldiers like these, there wasn't much she could do right now.
Yes.
She didn't know what Raines was planning, but she felt she could trust Rigday.
Please.
Once he found Vanille, Fang would return what she owed him. He could count on that. Chapter 3.
A deal, huh? I'm too nice, Rigday thought to himself as he walked the road from Bodhum Station to the shopping mall quarter.
They wouldn't get anything in return for this deal. Fang had said herself that she was a broken lassie, but even if that was the case, she wouldn't break so easily. They might not get any information on Pulse out of her, but it was true that they couldn't let her fall into PSICOM's hands. Searching for her friend wouldn't be a waste of effort. And if they could get her to join them, she would be a nice addition to their forces. When they had brought her in, Rigday had felt her strength and skill, but what was even more surprising was when they had let her use the training simulator. He had thought she might be getting bored just waiting around, and had brought her to the training room. While it might be true that there is a world of difference between a real flight and a simulated program, Fang managed to grab the high score on a machine she had never even seen before. It was no wonder she was able to escape from enemies so easily in unfamiliar territory. She had not only strength, but luck on her side. That she got tickets to Uriday with an overwritten ID card, and that she overwrote the card by accident, was nearly impossible to imagine. And then the air bike she used after her escape from the plant. It must have been left with the engine running, because there was no way she could have found a way to turn it on and make it run without knowing what she was doing. The owner of that bike must have left it on, planning on returning immediately. In fact, PSICOM had locked down the plant shortly after the accident. The owner might not have been able to return. Fang had said she had seen an unusual owl on Cocoon 3 times, an owl that had a human-like face and legs like those of her raptor. She had never seen one other than in a book. She had said Rigday himself had only seen one once. That she had seen one 3 times in only a few days showed how luck seemed to follow her. Fang's friend was still running from PSICOM, and without the help of the cavalry, her luck must be even greater than Fang's.
Perhaps all the sea from Pulse had such luck. But where should I begin looking for her? The fireworks festival was in a couple of days, and Bodhum was already filled with tourists. It would waste too much time and effort to look for her in this crowd. Fang had said that she wouldn't have gone far. Unless something had happened, she would be somewhere in Bodhum. But the problem was, Rigday didn't know much about the area, which meant he would have no choice but to search at random. Or so he thought. Then he heard a voice calling out his name. It was one of the officers from the Bodhum security force. Rigday had spoken with her a bit the other day when he had come to investigate. "You're Sergeant Farron, right?" "Sir," she said, saluting, a perfect textbook example of the good soldier. Her movements were tight and efficient. If given the chance, she could become very strong. Though he knew this already from the information he had seen on the troops, this is something he could tell just by looking at her. "Don't be so formal. Relax already," he said to her. That's when he had an idea. He might not know the area, but he could ask someone who did. "Do you know of any places where young people go to hang out? Anything is fine." It wasn't widely known that their suspect was a young girl. Fang's friend may have decided to hide herself with others her age so as not to raise suspicion. "Does this have something to do with the accident in Uriday?" Sergeant Farron's eyes lit up. Her intuition was sharp. "Is there a rumor going around?" Though she was trying to get information out of him, he decided to turn it back on her, hopefully to find out how the troops were feeling about the accident. "Well, I wouldn't say it's a rumor." "Oh?" "Our orders are to hand over the suspect. That is all. But PSICOM is here. They arrived here just after the accident. That's enough to raise anyone's suspicion." She said it casually, but was clearly waiting to see his reaction. "Well, soldiers in the lower ranks like us can understand what those higher-ups think anyway." "Excuse me, sir, but I don't believe Captain Rigday of the cavalry can be considered a part of the lower ranks." She could see right through him. Her eyes sharpened. The eyes of someone who knew exactly what he was about. If he tried to get any more information out of her, he would be digging his own grave. "In any case, that's not it. I'm just being used by a friend to find someone, that's all." He made a show of sighing and looking resigned. Not that he thought she'd buy it, but Rigday got the impression that she was not only sharp, but would know when to leave well enough alone. "I'm just having trouble searching for her, since I don't know the area, but you've come to the perfect time to help me." Just as expected, Sergeant Farron didn't ask any more about Uriday. "If you give me her ID number, I can tell it to soldiers who are on patrol." No, there's a reason we can't really have this known publicly." He explained that it was a girl who had run away from home. Sergeant Farron nodded, understanding. "So a girl. How often has she been in Bodhum?" "No, she doesn't really know the area either. She's from very far away." He wasn't lying. It was just further away than Sergeant Farron could imagine. "Anything you can tell me about her?" "She has her hair done up in 2 pigtails. Apparently she laughs and cries a lot. She's not shy at all." "Is this a little girl?" "No, she's around 17 or 18. Rigday started to say, then burst into laughter. "You're right, it does sound like a little girl." "No, I understand. I have a little sister about that age." Sergeant Farron smiled softly when she said that. It was the same expression Fang had when she was talking about her friend. "And she likes to take care of livestock. She likes to take care of animals. Are there any places in Bodhum where there are animals she could pet?" "As far as I know, there are only pet shops." The only place in Cocoon where there were really animals you could pet was Nautilus Park. But he couldn't imagine she would hang out there to pet sheep while she was on the run. No reason to continue this line of investigation further. "Well, it's not a place with animals, but there is a cafe where a lot of young people go." "Cafe?" "Yes, it's close to the beach. I hear that both locals and tourists go there often. Not that I ever go there." Her expression grew grim. It seemed she didn't have a very good opinion of the cafe. "Wow, you know a lot about it even though you never go there. And that's a good member of the security force." "Oh no, it's something that my little sister has talked about." "I see. Well, it's definitely worth checking out." That would be the perfect place for her to have gone. Lots of people her age there, so she wouldn't stand out. And since locals were there too, she would become friends with one of them and have a place to stay. "Alright, I'm going to try it. Thanks for your help." As always, Sergeant Farron made a perfect salute before departing. The cafe was just as Sergeant Farron said it was. There was a good mix of both locals and tourists, and all were young. But the face he was looking for was nowhere to be seen. "Welcome. I'm sorry, but currently our tables are all full. Would you like to sit at the counter?" Rigday had seen the blue-haired waiter before. The other day when he was off on investigation, the boy had been arrested and searched. It seemed PSICOM had noticed a package he had been protecting. But after they searched it, it turned out there was nothing important inside. "What would you like?" a bright voice asked as he sat down at the counter. A small woman stood behind the counter, shaking up drinks. She had black hair like Fang's, but there was a sweetness about her eyes that gave her a soft appearance. "I am a bit hungry.
You can make me anything you think is good. Any foods you don't like?
Rigday told her that there weren't any, and she smiled. The way she turned on the fire and handled the frying pan made it obvious she was a pro. She mixed up drinks and sliced up fruit, her hands a blur.
Snow! Hey, is snow here?
A boy of about 16 or 17 broke through the thick crowd in front of the counter. The scent of oil and grease lingered about him. Perhaps he was a mechanic.
I told you not to run inside the cafe. I know, but LeBro, where's Snow?
LeBro must have been the name of the woman behind the counter. She and the boy almost acted like mother and son, if you ignored their ages.
He said he had to go meet Serah. You just missed him. But never mind that, Mackie. Can you help me? I need you to pick up some vegetables from the back.
The boy named Mackie looked disappointed, but sighed and turned right back around and left the way he came. Rigday took another look around the cafe, but Fang's friend was still nowhere to be seen. Or at least there was no one who seemed to be on the run. Everyone in the room was talking and smiling, all without a care in the world.
PSICOM sure has shut up the news about the accident,
Rigday thought. Even though Uriday is only a stone's throw away from Bodhum, no one seems to be worried about what happened. Even the soldiers who were there don't know the whole story. Only soldiers with good heads on their shoulders like Sergeant Farron knew that PSICOM moving in meant something big. Even so, they didn't know the truth.
Sir, is there something you're waiting for?
Her voice brought him back to the present. The way he was looking for Fang's friend must have made her think he was waiting for someone. He shook his head.
I'm searching for someone. Have you seen a girl who's about 17 or 18 years old? About 3 come every hour. Is there anything else you can tell me about her? She wears her hair in 2 pigtails.
Rigday balled his hands in 2 fists by his head, indicating the style.
Is that all? Well, she has bracelets on both arms. Lots of thin ones. And I believe she had on necklaces too. I don't think she came here. Is she your girlfriend? No, wait. You said she was 18. Daughter, maybe? Hey, I'm just playing with you. But you said she was 18, had 2 pigtails, and had lots of bracelets and necklaces?
She had a good memory. It probably came from working at a cafe.
Apparently she laughs a lot and is always smiling. She also said she was careless, but liked to take care of others and is quite kind. That's not much to go on. Yeah, I guess.
It's true that she probably wouldn't break into laughter like Fang said she did at a place she had never been before. And it's doubtful that she would be taking care of other people when she needed to be taking care of herself. He forgot to mention that she cried a lot. That would probably help about as much as the rest of the information did.
Well, if you see her, can you let me know? Though I can't let her find out about it. What do you mean by that? That sounds awfully suspicious. She ran away from home. It would be dangerous if she ran too far, and her parents are counting on me to find her.
She gave him a suspicious look, but then shrugged.
Fine then. If a girl matching that description comes, I'll let you know. Thanks, I owe you one. If you could just write down where I can contact you at here. And here's your meal.
The plate full of food appeared before his eyes. She had been working all that time she had been talking to him. Quite impressive. So don't bring attention to yourself or we'll smack you upside the head. A lot of us are stronger than any soldiers, Rigday heard a voice say. There was no way any of them were stronger than a soldier, but he didn't want to cause any trouble. He wondered if they should carry something of Fang's around with him. If he had something of hers with him, it might be easier to get in contact with her friend. He thought about talking with Fang about it as he ate his meal. Eating better food than he had expected to get was the best thing that came out of the whole day. After leaving the cafe, he made another turn around the shopping mall, but it was wasted effort.
I see you couldn't find her,
Fang said to him when he arrived back on the Lindblom. She sighed in mock frustration.
Do you have any idea where she might be? Anywhere she could have gone?
Yeah, but I already looked there.
Of course, right.
Fang must have been wandering around town looking for her friend when they found her. She'd probably searched all the places she expected her to be and had come up with nothing. Then she was panicking so much she didn't notice she was being followed.
Oh hey, Fang said, slapping her knee. She might be in the forest or ocean or something. Why would she be there? For food. I mean, she had a card, but I doubt she got it to work.
Rigday looked surprised at the idea of catching fish and trapping birds to eat.
Is that so surprising? Well, I mean going into the ocean to catch fish. How can you live not knowing how to get food for yourself?
It seemed the Lucia Pulse were not only lucky, but tough as well.
She really likes cooking, you know. Makes up her own meals. She's made some pretty terrible stuff, though.
Fang smiled as she remembered her friend. Rigday thought about Sergeant Farron talking about her sister. Fang's friend must be like a little sister to her.
When we find her, she'll have to treat me to some pulse cooking. But hold off on that salt.
It seemed the food on Cocoon was tasteless to those from Pulse, and Fang was always dumping salt on her meals.
I'll tell her to make terrible food,
Fang said, grinning. Then she asked,
Why are you with a guy like Rains?
And why are you asking? Trying to get my secrets? Fang mumbled that it was partly true.
I don't really understand him at all. I don't know what he's thinking.
Well, he's an important man in the sanctum. Considering how many lives he has under his charge, it would be a problem if he were that easily read.
Is he really all that great?
If you can't tell what sort of man he is just from looking at him, Rigday thought, then maybe you need to get your eyes checked. But no, he realized that wasn't what she meant. She could at least tell that he was no simple man. He could see that.
So he's a brigadier general, right? And you're captain. What's the difference?
Well, a captain is just a company officer. A brigadier general is one of the lowest ranks of generals. Between the two, there is one other rank of field officer. Within that, there are colonels, lieutenant colonels, and lieutenant commanders. So there's quite a wide gap between his rank and mine.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Let's just say he's one of the higher-ups. Fang made a face. Rigday thought it was so hilarious he decided to keep pushing it. And after those three ranks, there are military officers. Even further below them, there are non-commissioned officers. Sergeant majors, sergeants, and corporals.
Enough already. You're making my head hurt,
Fang said while holding her head and sighing.
The army on Cocoon is complicated. Do you guys have fun making all those ranks?
Well, I wouldn't exactly say it's fun. Fang had never been persuaded to talk more about Pulse, but he now knew they didn't have an army. Well, it's true that those strict rules about ranks are kind of a pain. Rigday himself hated the stiff rules of the army and had once tried to quit. He had joined the military academy because he wanted to fly an airship. After graduation, he had entered into the army, but not because he wanted to become a soldier. If it weren't for his wanting to fly an airship, he would have nothing to do with it. It wasn't too long after that when Rains invited him to join the cavalry. Though he wasn't too much older than himself, he'd already been promoted to the rank of brigadier general. For a failed soldier like himself, he thought he wouldn't have much in common with him, and only half listened to his request. But eventually their talks became serious, and he could no longer ignore them. Their ideals matched, and he liked how Rains didn't treat those ideals as just an abstract theory. Rigday thought that so long as he was under this man, he would have a reason to stay in the army.
Even though you think it's a pain, you will still stay under Rains. Something about him appealed to you?
There wasn't any deep meaning behind Fang's question, but it would be dangerous for him to answer it. Entering it would expose too much of their hand.
Sorry, but I'm not a man who relies on his feelings.
Then what do you rely on?
I guess whether something makes sense or not. So it makes sense for you to work under Rains then.
Oh, and also, it wouldn't hurt to show just a card or two.
I always bet on the one who looks likeliest to win. I don't fight if I don't think I'm going to win.
I see, Fang said, with an odd look in her eyes.
What? It's just strange. I would have thought you'd be someone who relies more on their feelings.
I think you've overestimated me.
I'm not. I thought you were some idiot who let his feelings get the best of him. Well, I'm glad we've cleared up that misunderstanding, Rigday said as he exited the room.
He couldn't let himself get caught in Fang's traps. Just a moment ago, there had been an announcement from PSICOM. They were taking down their blockade around Uriday and letting tourists back into the plant. Too many things were happening at once. He had to find Fang's friend soon, before she fell into PSICOM's hands. He hurried to the bridge. Chapter 4. Fang had never thought that something as insignificant as no windows could make someone so nervous, and yet she found herself pacing back and forth in the tiny room. But that's not why she felt so nervous. It had been 2 days since she had arrived here, and 4 since Uriday, but still there was no sign of Vanille. Today Rigday had gone into Bodhum to search for her, but it just served to make Fang more nervous. Neither Rigday or Rains, nor anyone but her, knew how little time Vanille had left. While she was here doing nothing, Vanille's brand was evolving. She had to regain her memories and complete their focus before it was too late. She didn't want to get captured by the army, so she had agreed to stay on the Lindblom. This is wasting time she didn't have. It might be dangerous out there, or foolish to go out among all those soldiers, but it was better than waiting here doing nothing. Fang opened the door slowly and peeked out into the corridor. There weren't many people in the hallway during this time of day. Most of the soldiers were at their posts, the rest were sleeping. Yesterday she had been bored and left her room, but she soon got lost. She had thought to find someone and ask them where her room was, but she couldn't find anyone. After an hour of wandering through the ship, she finally found her way back to the room. No one was in the corridor, just as she had thought. Fang ran. She planned to find the small ship they had brought her here in and escape with it. Though she didn't know how to use it, she hoped that it would be the same as the air bike. All she had to do was get on it, and it would work out somehow. But no matter where she ran to, the ship was nowhere to be found. Every direction she went in was a dead end. If she had known this would happen, she would have searched more around the ship the day before. She could have told someone she was bored and had them show her around. Except for Rigday, everyone else thought that she was only a guest of Rains's. If she had asked, they probably would have agreed. Failed again. Another dead end. Fang sat at the cold metal wall in front of her.
Failed at what?
A cold voice said behind her. Rains.
It would be a bit of a problem for you to go wandering about, you see. So we put up barriers. All the doors near the Bay Area need to be unlocked to get through.
They knew what she had been planning. Fang thought as she bit her lip and glared at Rains.
Army planes and ships wouldn't be as easy to use as a civilian air bike. You couldn't just get on one and hope for the best. Even as a lessee, there wouldn't be much left of you at that speed.
I see. Fang quickly glanced around the area. No one was there. If he was the only one here, surely there was something she could do. Even if she couldn't defeat him, perhaps there was a way to neutralize him.
There is something I want to show you.
No, want you to listen to. If you want to fight, go ahead, but we can do it afterward.
Sure, you just want to buy time until your men arrive. Like I'd believe that.
Rains burst into laughter, shaking his head. He grabbed his sword and held it out to her.
I'll give you this. If any of my men arrive, you can kill me, take me hostage, whatever you like.
What? Fang said, taken aback by the sword he offered.
Are you stupid?
Oh yes, most likely, Rains said calmly, turning back around and motioning for her to follow him. The will to fight left her. Gripping the sword tightly, she followed after him. It was the same room from 2 days ago, when they had taken off her blindfold after departing the smaller ship. That room. But perhaps because she had grown used to living on the ship, the lowness of the ceilings no longer seemed strange to her.
So, what do you want me to listen to?
Sitting in a chair, Fang fiddled with the sword. She had no intentions of stabbing him in the back, but she wasn't about to let go of her only weapon. If he did anything funny, she would use it on him. Rain switched on the device that sat on his desk, explaining nothing of his actions. A loud crackle sounded from the machine before voices filled the room.
Don't you think it was a little too early to take down the barricade around your day?
But if we held it too long, the citizens will begin to worry. If that happened, then there will have been no reason to have hidden the existence of the lessee. 2 men spoke, one young and one old. No, the one that was probably not that young, just younger than the other one.
What is this?
Fang said. Rains put his finger to his lip and motioned for her to listen. The younger man continued. We could at least continue to investigate until the lessee is captured. Already rumors are circulating that what happened at XIII was no mere accident. If we kept up the barricade and investigation, those rumors would only grow. The voice of a woman interrupted him. It was the same woman whose Rains talked with 2 days ago.
If it's information you're worried about, there is a way we can manipulate it.
And by that, you mean people will only listen to what they want to hear. What foolish people. Just who was this old man? She could figure out that he was someone with a high rank, but just who did he think he was, looking down on people like that?
That is the representative of the Sanctum, Galenth Disley. The other 2 are Lieutenant Colonels Rosh and Nabat of PSICOM.
Thang remembered. That woman's name was Nabat. But I've just received a reprimand from XIII. They have said to not hide the truth from the people. It seems the XIII was displeased with what I was doing, even though it was for the sake of the people. XIII said, yes, they said to lift the barricade and to cease the investigation. They wish for the lives of the people to return to normal.
That's madness! There are escaped lessee out there, who we haven't even found a trace of, let alone caught. If we leave them be, they could go and destroy something else.
I agree, but I am nothing but a spokesperson for the XIII. I cannot go against their commands. A blip sounded, and the conversation cut off as suddenly as it had begun.
Our inside man was recording it.
That explained why the sound had been so odd. A hidden mic. Even so, though he had said they were opposing factions, she had thought he would go so far as to record their conversations. It seemed the rivalry between PSICOM and Rains' cavalry went deeper than she imagined.
This is the real Cocoon, where the Primarch of the Sanctum thinks of the people as nothing but sheep. Primarch? Was that the old man? Is he that important?
Rains nodded as if the thought pained him.
The person with the most power in Cocoon does only what the XIII commands. As long as Cocoon remains under the rule of the Sanctum, the people of Cocoon are nothing but the livestock of the XIII. So why have me listen to this? Do you want me to say, oh, I'm sorry?
He ignored her sarcastic comment and continued.
You say you have forgotten, but there can only be one focus for a lessee of Pulse to complete on Cocoon. Defeating the Cocoon XIII. It could be the destruction of all Cocoon. Do you think so? If that were the case, what would be the point of you waking up within Cocoon itself?
It was true. She thought it strange that they had been brought up here, and with XIII anima. It had made her think that perhaps her focus wasn't to destroy Cocoon itself, but to destroy its core.
You see, it all fits if you think of it that way, which must mean you have the power to destroy fal'Cie. That is a power we want for ourselves. The power to destroy fal'Cie? Did he mean he wanted the power to destroy the cocoon fal'Cie? Please, I want to ask you to lend us that power. You want me to destroy the cocoon fal'Cie? Aren't you a soldier of cocoon? I don't want to stop at just fal'Cie Eden. I want to destroy that puppet government as well. Fang had thought he just had a rivalry going with PSICOM or Nabat, but it seemed it went much further than that. He was against not only PSICOM, but the Sanctum. But we're your enemy. Both of us are enemies of the cocoon fal'Cie. We might have been enemies originally, but I think we will be able to form an alliance under these circumstances. Rains' eyes were serious. He wasn't the kind of person who would say such things jokingly. Are you okay with this? If you borrow our power, you'll betray Cocoon. I'll do anything to achieve my goal. Now she understood. The reason he had worked so hard to help his enemies was so that he could go up against someone even more powerful. I said I've been searching for my friend. I'll only make a decision after we've found her. I understand. We'll do anything we can to help find her. I just don't want you to take any rash actions. You want me to sit still and be a good girl? For how long? Now that she knew what his aim was, now that she understood him, she was willing to listen. As Daisley said, they've lifted the barricade and stopped the investigation in Uriday. PSICOM will remain in the city for a few days, but security won't be so tight. He held up 3 fingers. Just wait 3 more days. What happens in 3 days? He told her about the fireworks festival. That's right, Fang thought. He had heard talk of it in the city. It was a huge festival where people from all over Cocoon came to see the fireworks. Oh, and by the day of the festival, the Guardian Corps will be policing the grounds. PSICOM will also be there, but unable to move against you. You will be able to mix in with the tourists and not stand out so much. Vanille would probably still be okay in 3 days, Fang said, nodding. I'll stay here until the festival. Just one thing. One thing. I still haven't decided whether or not I'm going to help you. If their focus was to destroy Cocoon fal'Cie, then it would be helpful for them to join forces with Rains. If not, it would only waste precious time. While Vanille's brand was still alive, every second counted. They couldn't give those seconds to the enemy. Until her memory returned, she couldn't make a decision. That's fine. I'll wait until you've met up with your friend, and then you can give me your answer. Even if they found Vanille, she wouldn't be able to give him an answer unless her memories returned. But she wasn't about to tell Rains that. Chapter 5. The search for Vanille continued, but Rigday came up empty-handed. Before Fang realized, the next 2 days had passed, and the festival was about to begin. She still had problems with her memory. She tried to recall things about her childhood, or the names of people she knew, but her mind remained as blank as ever. As promised, Rains let her go to the surface. Fang was given a small wireless device so that they could be able to contact her at a moment's notice. They also gave her a transfer device that would allow her to gain access to her weapon quickly. Thanks, Fang thought. Even though neither of them really gained anything from their deal, she still felt she owed something to Rigday. The temple was the first place she visited. Rigday hadn't said anything about the temple. That probably meant neither he nor anyone else knew you could get into it. As they had searched everywhere else without finding Vanille, it was likely that she had hidden there. Only a few days had passed since they had left the temple, but the inside felt comforting and familiar. In this strange world, it was her last connection to home. Looking around, Fang saw that the priest's clothes he had slept on were thrown haphazardly on the floor. Vanille had already been here, but now there was no sign of her. They may have just missed each other. She spotted Vanille's weapon. It worried Fang that Vanille was walking around unarmed. She must have left it so as not to attract attention to herself. Unfortunately, unlike when they had first woken up, the city was dangerous now, with soldiers everywhere. Fang circled around once more, just in case, before going back outside. Just in case Vanille returned here, she gathered up the clothes on the floor and folded them properly as a sign that Fang had returned. If only fal'Cie Anima would tell her something. Whether or not Vanille had returned here, or where she had gone. That old man said that the fal'Cie had been angry with him. It was possible that Cocoon fal'Cie had a way to communicate with people. Such a thing would never happen with Grand Pulse fal'Cie. Though I bet it would be pretty annoying if they did talk, she thought aloud. They would probably just give orders and ignore what anyone else had to say. That's how fal'Cie were. In the end, you can only count on yourself, she mused. Fang walked along the beach where they had fished, and into the forest they had planned to hunt. When she returned to the city, it was already evening. Fang poked around the field where they had stolen vegetables, but Vanille was not there either. And there still isn't anyone looking after this place. Fang looked at the fenceless field and laughed. Though, and this was probably only because she had been here too long, even this field seemed beautiful to her now.
She crouched down and put her hands in the dirt. Vanille might have come here and done the same. She knew she had. But I can't wait here for her. Fang clapped her hands together to get rid of the dirt, and stood up. Then she noticed something had fallen on the ground. It was the wireless device. She had forgotten about it completely. When she picked it up, she noticed a light blinking on and off. It seemed someone had tried to contact her. Now how did this work again? She fiddled around with it like she had the air bike, trying to get it to work, when suddenly it connected. It seemed she was good with this sort of thing. Where have you been? Rigday yelled when she held it to her ear. Why did you keep ignoring me? Sorry, I forgot I had this thing. I can't believe this, she heard him sigh. Hey, I'm not used to crap like this. Well, whatever. I needed to tell you that PSICOM is in the Vestige. Vestige? Then she remembered. They called the temple the Bodhum Pulse Vestige. It seems they're conducting an investigation. But why? It was difficult to keep her voice from shaking. What are they looking for? I don't know the details. We only received the communication. But I do know they're using military monsters. Not only the Zwerg scan droids they use for searches, but the Pantherons they use for hunting. Fang didn't know the difference between these monsters, but she could tell from the way Rigday talked about them that this wasn't normal. They've even deployed armed soldiers. Don't go near them. They aren't the sort of enemy you can take down by yourself. When Fang had returned to the temple, she had seen no sign of soldiers or anyone else. Maybe she had just missed them. In any case, did you find her? If I had, I would have already returned. I see. Well, anyway, it would probably be best if you hid yourself in the crowd so they can't find you. Oh, wait a moment. His voice cut off. He must have received another call. But he didn't leave her waiting long. Don't go near the Guardian Corps' base, he said when he came back on the line. We just received video from the security system. There's a fleet of airships headed this way with all speed. This is no simple investigation. I'll be careful, Fang replied, switching off the wireless device and running towards the temple. She trusted Rigday, but if Vanille returned there, she would be in trouble. But when she got within sight of the temple, she saw that Rigday had been right. The temple was surrounded by army vehicles. It was as though the outside of the temple was swarming with insects. As much as she hated to admit it, there was no way she would have a chance against that. She could forget about helping Vanille. She wouldn't even be able to enter the temple. This might not even be the first time they had been to the temple. Was it possible that they had come without Rigday and his crew realizing it? That might explain why Vanille hadn't been in the temple. She saw the soldiers and ran, leaving her weapon behind. That must be it, Fang said to herself, which means Vanille isn't in there. I'll just have to believe that for now and search somewhere else. It was growing dark. Soon it would be too dark to search for her. Fang walked quickly to the shopping mall. It's not really dark at all. Both the shopping mall and the beach were as bright as day, and filled with people. The fireworks bursting in the sky lit up the whole city. Sparks exploded in the sky, booming and lighting up the faces around her. Fang supposed having the light would help her search for Vanille, if she were there. But she wasn't. Fang had walked to every crack and corner of the shopping mall. She went to the vending machine where she first bought drinks for them with her card, and to the grocery store where they were given a map, to everywhere the two of them had gone together, but still, no Vanille. There were too many people. When they came here, just after waking up, she couldn't figure out where all these people had come from. But tonight, the mall was even more crowded than before. It was useful for when you wanted to hide, but impossible to find someone in. Tired of walking, Fang went to rest in the cafe on the beach. She realized this was the same cafe Rigday had talked about when she saw the woman mixing drinks behind the counter. He had said she was good. Welcome. Bar still okay for you? She smiled. Yes, he had mentioned how friendly she was. Fang nodded, relaxing. She was even more tired than she had thought. She hadn't rested since noon, so this was no surprise. What'll it be? A drink. Something very sweet. She nodded and grabbed a glass. You look pretty tired. Yeah, I guess. Did you go shopping? Find anything good? Oddly enough, it didn't feel strange to have this woman asking her questions. Maybe it's because she was so close in age to Vanille. Fang thought of Vanille's smile. Actually, I'm looking for someone. Oh? Did they get lost? It is the fireworks festival. Stuff like that happens. Your friend? Yeah. What's she like? Fang was about to answer when the woman called out to someone behind her. You're late. She said she'd be waiting at the usual place. The man she talked to was large and well-built. Fang wondered if he was a regular here. He turned around and left quickly, so she didn't get a good look at his face. Only the impression of the frayed sleeves of his long coat and the thick leather gloves he wore remained in her mind. It made him seem hot and sweaty rather than tough. I'm sorry for interrupting you. What were you going to say? She placed a drink in front of her. Fang took a swig, and it was just as sweet as she had hoped. The cool liquid sliding down her throat felt good. All the drinks she'd had in Cocoon were too watery for her taste, but this one was good, even if a bit watery. As Rigday had said, this must be a good restaurant by Cocoon standards. Fang grabbed some fruit slices that she had seen placed on the counter and took a bite. tasteless.
So this girl you're looking for, can you describe her?
I would say she's about as old as... No, probably a bit younger than you are. She's a scaredy cat, but curious about everything. She's careless and naive, but kind to everyone, and she laughs a lot.
Is she cute?
Yeah, but a crybaby.
The woman was a good listener, so Fang continued.
When she's lonely or worried, she always cries. But if I pat her on the head, she'll forget it all in an instant. She's just like that.
I see. Well, I hope you can find her soon so you can pat her on the head.
Yeah, Fang said, nodding. Vanille isn't the only one feeling lonely and worried, she thought, surprising herself.
Have you wished on the fireworks yet?
Wish?
You don't know? There's a legend that Bodhum's fireworks can grant wishes.
I heard that story, but...
She'd already heard about it several times. But Fang didn't know whether Cocoon's fireworks would want to grant her wishes.
No, never mind.
Well, if you haven't wished for anything yet, why not wish that you'll find her? Or maybe that she isn't crying.
Fang agreed and stood up. She had stayed here longer than she had planned.
If you still haven't found her, come around. I'll tell you if we've seen anyone like her.
Yeah, thanks.
After paying with her card, Fang went outside. It had been crowded inside the cafe, but the outside was even worse.
It's like looking for a grain of sand in the desert.
She sighed and looked up at the sky. Perhaps it was like trying to hold the sparks that lit up the sky in her hands. She touched her fingers together. On Grand Pulse, this was a prayer, but people on Cocoon would have no idea what she was doing.
Is Vanille looking up at this sky?
As she thought that, the wireless device began vibrating. It was Rigday. She hoped he was calling to tell her they had found her, but no, his voice was urgent.
Where are you? I'm in front of the cafe you talked about. Alright, return to the meeting point. We'll pick you up there.
They'd only planned to have her return to the Lindblom if they found Vanille, or when the fireworks festival had ended, but from the tone of his voice she could tell that he did not have good news.
What happened? Something terrible. I'll tell you more about it when you've returned.
Fang said she understood and switched off the device. She had a bad feeling about this. Chapter 6. Intercepting the information wasn't in their original plan. It wasn't scrambled or coded, and the first person to hear it was one of the lower-ranking radio communications operators. He thought it was a prank at first. If Rigday hadn't passed by at the time, he wouldn't have saved it, much less reported it. A pulse fal'C has been found in the vestige. It had cut off there. If Rigday hadn't known that PSICOM was investigating the vestige, he would have thought it a prank himself. They were able to figure out the truth of it pretty quickly, because PSICOM soon sealed off the vestige. After they had received the video communication, they had learned that most of PSICOM was heading toward Bodhum. They had received the order to pull out immediately. That's why they had had Fang return to the Lindblom. Though she was probably still searching for her friend, they didn't have much of a choice. That's how fast PSICOM worked. Not only was the cavalry ordered to pull out, but Bodhum's own Guardian Corps were as well, and during the middle of the fireworks festival.
Just what are they thinking?
They were probably hoping to stall for time before the info gets leaked.
So they found a pulse fal'C?
It was probably a shock to even the highest-ranking PSICOM officials. It was likely that the soldiers who found the fal'C had panicked and forgotten to scramble the message. They had put it on a frequency that even civilians had access to. Other people had probably already intercepted the transmission. And like with the incident in Uriday, a gag order would just have the opposite effect. Once they finished barricading the city, they'll reveal the existence of the pulse fal'C.
Do you think the people will panic?
At least within the city, Rains nodded. That would be the reason for the barricade. Even if there were a panic in Bodhum, it wouldn't spread to any other area. Sealing off both the people and the information would allow people outside of Bodhum to remain detached from the situation. People don't care about others when it doesn't directly relate to themselves. The people outside of Bodhum would soon lose interest.
I still can't believe there was something like that hiding in the vestige.
That would be why Fang insisted on staying within Bodhum. Even when they suggested that her friend might have run somewhere else, Fang had simply answered that it wasn't possible. While that wasn't exactly strange, now it all made sense if a pulse fal'C was close by. Both Fang and her friend were l'Cie. They couldn't leave their fal'C behind just because they were being chased.
If only we could have found her friend before they discovered that thing.
Unfortunately, I believe we'll have to give up on that. We can't get close to the vestige now, much less search it. Even if they managed to break through the barrier, they wouldn't be able to get out again. It had been hard enough helping Fang to escape from Uriday, and the barricade this time would be far stronger.
What the hell is going to happen now?
As Rigday said those words, Rains picked up his wireless transceiver.
Is it?
He didn't even have to ask. He could tell by the expression on Rains' face. It was a call from their inside man. It had only been a few days before that Rains had gotten a man in PSICOM on their side. This is how they were able to react so quickly and rescue Fang.
Sorry,
could you go outside for a moment? Rigday nodded silently and stood. They had an agreement that the only one to know the man's identity would be Rains. Since the information he gave them was so good, Rigday figured it was someone high up. Rigday turned back for a moment and saw the look on Rains' face when he answered the call. He always looked somewhat strange. Rigday didn't know what it was, he just knew he looked different. Maybe it was because he had to put in so much effort to talk to the man. Rigday supposed he was a man worth the price. No, he wasn't really sure it was even a man at all. Alright then, time to pick up Fang. It wasn't a job he was looking forward to. He would have to tell her that she had to give up looking for her friend. The image of her face flashed in his mind. She'll just say we're enemies again. He had thought that they would be able to work together. They had a common enemy and cause, and he thought they would fight together. But now, he felt unusually depressed. Chapter 7. What did you say? Fang made a grab for Rains' shoulders, but Rigday stopped her. She was so angry she didn't even notice. We've been ordered to leave Bodhum. We won't be able to stay in this airspace any longer. You! They tried to apologize, but the words flew past her. Let me off this ship! Let me off now! Searching for Vanille would be hard, she knew. That was why she had stayed on the ship like a good girl. She'd even been grateful to them. But now this? Calm down! Calm down! Calm down! She tried to push him off her, but Rigday didn't move an inch. PSICOM's forces are arriving. I'm sorry, but all their weaponry is made specifically to go against people and creatures from Pulse. It would be suicide. Do you think I care? Do you want to die? Of course! It would be better to die than to let Vanille become a thief, to abandon her. We haven't lost all hope, Rigday said quietly. The argument died on her lips. He seemed uncomfortable, and his grip on her relaxed. What? But you said... I said we would have to leave the area, but I didn't say we would stop searching. It's the same thing. You just want to find your friend, right? Then there shouldn't be a problem if you meet up with her somewhere outside of Bodhum, Rains said. Fang looked over at Rigday, confused. Rigday himself was giving Rains a puzzled look. Sir, what do you... Rigday started to say, but closed his mouth. Fang wondered if he understood what Rains meant. The Sanctum has made the decision to purge everyone in Bodhum to Pulse. Not only residents of Bodhum, but every single person currently in the area. The announcement would be tomorrow, he continued, and they would begin to move people out the day after that. Surely not, Rigday whispered, his voice hoarse. It seemed the truth was far worse than he had imagined. They'll be brought to the Hanging Edge by train, and then they'll be sent to Pulse. It was the borderlands of Cocoon, Rigday explained. No one but monsters lived there. In fact, it was forbidden for citizens of Cocoon to enter. If your friend is in Bodhum, she'll be sent there on the Purge train. We currently can't go anywhere near Bodhum because of PSICOM. But what about if we found her in the Hanging Edge? And I've heard that the vestige containing the fal'Cie will be moved there, so I'd assume all of their efforts will go towards guarding that. You're saying we should pick Fang's friend up off the Purge train? Sir, that's... stupid, you think. However, he looked straight at Fang, even if we stop searching now, you will still be surrounded by our enemies, right? Except you're still an enemy. I thought I already explained this. We want the power to take down the fal'Cie, the Sanctum. Yeah, I heard. Do you think I have to care about your power struggles? This isn't a power struggle. That's not what I want. And what is it you want? To not be kept as sheep. Not just for myself, but for all the people of Cocoon. Fang thought she saw something deeper than his eyes. It was something that she had seen somewhere before. We're humans. We have our own wills, our own feelings, our own ideals. To be human is to rule over your own heart. We aren't just tools of the fal'Cie. Then she remembered where she had seen that look before. It had been in the eyes of those people who had their homes destroyed by the Cocoon fal'Cie. The color of pain and despair. Fang's eyes may have looked the same, even now. That was why she had no regrets in becoming a l'Cie. We will use all of our power to find your friend. That I promise you. But sir! Rigday tried to cut in, but Rains stopped him with his hand. This is just another part of our work. Because these people had the slightest brush with Pulse, their lives are being destroyed. We cannot just ignore it. Well, only because you insist. Even though I think that of all the stupid plans I've ever heard, this one's the stupidest. But I'm only going along with it because it's not impossible. Rigday always spoke lightly, but Fang saw that he was serious. They would be saving Vanille from a train guarded by members of PSICOM who outnumbered them in both soldiers and weapons. It wouldn't be easy, and it might mean the cavalry would have to make sacrifices. Then I owe you. Fang closed her eyes for a moment and prayed that their focus would be to destroy the Cocoon fal'Cie. They would be able to fight together, that there would be no mistake in making that decision. Then, when we meet up with my friend, with Vanille, we will help you. We will use all of our powers to crush the Cocoon fal'Cie. Rains smiled slightly, She still couldn't tell what he was thinking, but she decided that was okay. As long as they were fighting together, that would be enough. The Lindblum landed on the surface of Lake Brescia on the day the purge train left Bodhum. It was hard to hide a large airship in the environs around the Hanging Edge, so they decided to land at Lake Brescia and use smaller vehicles to get closer to the train. That was the plan. Just a little longer, Fang whispered, glancing down at the waters of Lake Brescia spreading out beneath her. She was riding in one of the smaller vehicles, towards the Hanging Edge.
Yep, just one more hour and the purge train will arrive. Then we'll all have a big happy reunion,
Big Day joked. Then, just out the window, Fang saw a white bird.
What's up?
That bird, she pointed, but the bird was already moving off into the distance. Its white wings disappeared into the clouds. Fang remembered that she had seen it when Rigday had captured her. She had thought she would be held captive, but because they had taken her, she had managed to remain safe and was now going to be able to rescue Vanille. This really was a bird of luck. It would be okay this time. She'd even prayed to those legendary fireworks or whatever they were. They would find Vanille. They had to. Nah, it's nothing, Fang smiled and turned her eyes forward. The Hanging Edge was close now.